how did you market? What were your first steps in marketing your work?
Well, the bad news is that it was a lot easier 10 years ago than it is now, because Diamond would carry basically anything once, and then if it didn't sell, they'd drop it. But now you have to sell 2,000 or 2,500. It's something. It's a really high number before they'll carry it.
That's not per year. That's
right. Like that. It has the initial order has to be that, or else they cancel it. So you won't even know if like they'll put it in the catalog, but you won't even know if they'll actually fill those orders.
Clarify who exactly is Diamond.
Diamond is this big retailer. They're the biggest retailer in the comic industry.
well, distributor.
Distributor. Sorry, not retailer. Distributor. And your other choices are these very small distributors who carry mostly independent stuff. Well, not all of them. Some of them carry some more mainstream stuff. But Diamond is by far the biggest. Or if you're trying to go on the book side, you have a lot of choices of book distributors, but they all have extremely high barriers of entry as well. For example, Ingram won't carry a book unless you have 7 books in print that all have ISBNs. So the distribution is a lot harder than it used to be. But you, I don't know. Maybe Liz can even talk to this more now, more recent experience.
I found it pretty easy to self-distribute. Even I still make my own mini comics, even though Top Shelf does my longer books. And I just have a network of stores that I know will carry self-published things. There's a place called Atomic Books in Baltimore, Quimby's in Chicago, Meltdown and Secret Headquarters in Los Angeles, a bunch of places in Portland. I mean, the internet is a really great resource just because you can look up stores and they'll usually have consignment policies listed, and you can contact them and see if they would want to take your book. And so it takes a little bit of time, but it's definitely not impossible.
I think there are some that will just completely do it themselves and just sell from like Etsy stores or just their own website, and I think that works as well. I mean, it's a much smaller scale than going through a distributor, but.
The other good news and bad news is there aren't really that many comic stores that carry independent material. So you can actually develop a mailing list with just those stores. It's only like a couple hundred, and there's only maybe 50 that are considered like the really top stores that will consistently keep track of and reorder everything. And luckily we have a bunch of them in the Boston area, but yeah, like even if you just targeted like the top 30, 40 stores, that's like 90% of your market for the comic side.
Yeah, I decided to start local, and I used my feet and my hands and my mouth, and I went from one store to another with a pile of books under my arms. And I just tried to tell them how amazing this idea about the Boston Comics Roundtable was and how amazing these comics were inside. And, I managed to hoodwink a few retailers along the way. And, hopefully they sell. And then you have to prove your success by coming out with a second book and then a third book. And what you're doing is you're building a distribution network as you do that. Now, the Boston Comics Roundtable is inherently local, and so we decided to focus on local. But now we have stores all over the country just because there's the network effect of the group itself. People are from Atlanta, so when they go home to visit their folks, they'll bring 5 books, drop it off in their Atlanta store, in LA, in Chicago, it is a very grassroots thing. It can be a very grassroots thing, and you find that it's a little uncomfortable to try and sell your book the first time, but it's a lot easier the 10th time, and it's second nature the 100th time you try and pitch your book to somebody.
We have, go ahead.
Another resource out there for retailer contacts is an organization called Comics Pro. There are roughly 120 or so retailers, and that's not necessarily a collection of indie-friendly stores. It's a collection of comic book stores, comic book retailers that are trying to provide a collective voice for comic book retailers in the industry. But because we spend roughly, $300 a year in dues and maybe more in going to the annual meeting, they tend to be the stores who are most open-minded to carrying indie books. So you should look up Comics Pro, and I think there's a list of all the members there.